So, once again, thank you for coming tonight. We have an extremely special program focused on Muskegon County. And I want to take this opportunity and introduce one of our board members, Neil Mullally, who's going to come up, say a few words, and then introduce our guest for tonight. Thank you, Neil.
Well, thank you for that enthusiastic response. I'm very proud tonight to introduce somebody I know in a long time, and you probably have guessed by now that somehow Richard Mullally and I are related. And we are related as cousins, as somewhat distant cousins, but we're the same age. We were both born and raised here in Muskegon. We've known each other for many years. And I wanted to say that he, for the past 10 years, many of us don't realize that, at least more than 10 years now, he has spent 6 days a week collecting, searching, looking for veterans from Muskegon County from World War II, and collecting their pictures, collecting their stories, and preserving those. He last spoke here, I think, about 3 years ago, and he had 2,000 names. Now he has over 5,000, and he's going strong. I had the privilege a week or so ago of hearing a talk by Ken Burns. You all know Ken Burns, the cinematographer, the documentarian who made the Civil War series in baseball and so forth. By the way, his next documentary is coming out next year, 2017, on the Vietnam War. So we got to make sure to look for that. But he made the point in this talk that history isn't about memorizing dates and battles and so forth. It's about story. We forget the word story in history. That's what really history is. That's what these people are going to be saying, telling us about at the end of October. And that's what Richard is going to tell us about tonight. So I couldn't be more proud to introduce him. Richard deserves all the credit he can get, and he is tireless. There have been mornings when my brothers and I, we met with him early on. He's already 6:37 in the morning, got his day mapped out, who he's going to see, and what he's going to try to accomplish. As I say, 6 days a week. He's had the door slammed in his face at times. He has other people welcome him. He's got stories. And these are what we're trying to preserve and have everyone learn about from our friends and neighbors and relatives here in Muskegon County that we may have never known about if it weren't for Richard. So Richard, please come forward.
Thank you, Cousin Neil. If I could just find my, here's the clicker. I wanted Neil to introduce me because I was sure he could pronounce my last name. I can use the technique that Bill Clinton and his wife have done for years when there's a gathering. They'll point at somebody in the crowd and laugh and say hi, even though they're just pointing in the middle of midair. But I can do that tonight, and everywhere I point, there is a World War II veteran. And before I go any farther, this might take a while, but I would like every World War II veteran to stand for a moment. Thank you. I won't make you stand again. You've already stood twice tonight, and you can sit back and listen and enjoy what I'm going to say. I wish I could tell all their stories. In a way, their stories are told in the museum. Every person you just saw stand and 5,000 others have their picture on display at the LST Museum in Muskegon, and it will be there forever. 5,000 sounds like a big number, doesn't it? But it's really 20,000 I'm looking for, because Muskegon County was a huge contributor to the war effort. And I want to say, and I know I'm speaking for the younger people here tonight, that I want to thank every one of you veterans who just stood from the bottom of my heart for what you did for us. Each one of you, in your own particular way, and 16.5 million others, saved the world. And you gave that world to your children, your grandchildren, and although some of the things that have happened since have discouraged people, you did it for us, and you truly are the greatest generation. Now, if you watch the news any night, you'll find out that the world is not completely safe. General MacArthur, at the very end of the war, said that it was his hope that peace would endure forever. Didn't work. When I watch the news, and maybe when you watch the news, it's so depressing, I don't know what to do. A few years ago, I decided I'm going to do something, and that is to say thank you to the men and women who served their country. At first, I just started with my own family. Oh, excuse me, we'll go back a minute. From 1995 to 1999, I really wanted to talk to a World War I veteran. My own uncle was a veteran of the war, but he only told me a few things, and he passed away. So I wondered if there were any more left. 1995 through 1999, I could only find 5. And each one of them lived in a different county. Only Otto Scharmer lived in Muskegon County, so I had to go to Kent County and other surrounding counties to meet these individual men. The youngest one was 100, and I knew Otto Scharmer when he passed away at 105. Now, 3 of those people are Muskegon County people. George Petropoulos. Now, the oldest people here might remember a restaurant in Muskegon, George's Restaurant. That was George Petropoulos. I had the distinct honor to meet him at the age of 102, the year that he died, and he told me what a polar bear is. Very few people here know about that, but there were a group of Americans who were asked, or let's say, forced to continue their service after World War I was over in the coldest part of the world. He was one of them, and he was able to tell me everything about what it was like. Rudolph Johnson was a Muskegon City Police detective, and I found him in Ottawa County. And Otto Scharmer lived his whole life in Muskegon. And I realized a 4-year project and only finding 5 veterans, I waited too long. And I thought maybe I can go farther and find some World War II veterans. And it's turned out to the advantage. I spent 15 years devoting myself to convincing the restaurants in Muskegon and all across the state, working with the restaurant owners to get rid of smoking. The managers and also the state legislators, I communicated with all of them, and we finally, in Michigan, became the 39th state in the United States that got rid of all smoking in restaurants. And I remember the very day when Governor Granholm said, "The bill has passed, and when it reaches my desk, I will sign it." I stopped completely, dead stop, gave that up because it was done, and I called the husband of my second cousin and said, "Could I come over and ask you about your service in World War II?" And he said, "Come right over." So he got out his uniform, got fixed up, and he told me all about what he did. This is veteran number 1 out of 5,300. Well, I had other relatives who needed to be talked to, so I would visit them. And it was only a family project. I was only doing it for the 22 people in my extended family, blood relatives and by marriage, who served in World War II. When I finished with that last one, I thought, well, what about my high school teachers? What about my Sunday school teachers? What about my barber? So I just continued on, and eventually 2 different museums contacted me and asked, may we have the pictures? One of them was this museum, one of them is the LST museum. So I found I had a mission in life. I can do something and meet some wonderful people. I was told right away by a friend, you'll never get them to talk. Well, it's the opposite of that. I'm so happy to have met all of you veterans, generally in your home, and to hear your stories. And a man named Tom Bourdon is here, and he set some kind of a record with me. It was the second longest interview I've ever had with a veteran, 3 hours, 15 minutes, and he still wanted to go on. We're going to see Tom Bourdon soon. Where did I find these veterans? They were all over the place in 2009 at Mr. Quick and other restaurants. There they were. And I remember in 2010, I had a calendar that some days I would actually schedule 4 living World War II veterans. And I realized that's not fair. To say, well, I've got to get going, I'm the next veteran. No. I decided at that point, 1 a day. Well, nowadays, there's hardly ever one. Used them all up. Once in a great while, I'll meet a living veteran, and that's quite a treat. Most of my work now is with widows and the children, my age, of the veterans. And I'm including people who are now deceased, of course. I asked one lady about her dad. I had an idea he was a veteran, and she said, yes, he was, but he's dead. Oh, well, he still counts, doesn't he? And she was glad to provide a picture of him. Most of these people are gone. There are only 3 here who are still living, so that's what happens in 7 years. Well, this is one member of my family I will mention, like all the other 22. The tribute photos are the very best picture available from the family and the most complete information available generally from the family. And when I get to that point, they go right to the museum. My 2 boys here, and I'll say that tonight is one of the peak moments of my life, but it's beat by the fact that I was there to witness the birth of my 2 sons, who are both here helping to record. And when I say I was there to assist, you ladies will laugh at that, won't you? So I'll just say that I was there to welcome them into the world. But tonight will be remembered by myself and some of you too, I'm sure. I would make sure that my children knew their great uncles and aunts. We made visits. When they were just little tots, I took them to meet Uncle George, and well, he was over in Europe, and he had a lot of things he brought home or sent home. So I have a picture of my son wearing the Nazi helmet, holding the German sword, and my other son is holding the Luger. Pretty special stuff, along with his stories. A couple weeks after we met him and talked with him, my youngest son, who is recording right there, said, when are we going to go see that Nazi guy again? Well, that's the understanding of a small child, and I won't forget that. Tom Bourdon, I won't ask you to stand up again. Would you raise your hand? Okay, right here. This is Tom Bourdon. family, Tom, who is the only living person in Muskegon who has the Navy Cross, one step under the Congressional Medal of Honor. But not only him, but 4 other members of his family are included in this program, because his brother told me about Tom, Tom told me about this one, and it's great when I can complete a whole family. I met this man at Whitlow's restaurant, and he looked the part. So I went over and said, "Excuse me," like I've said hundreds of times, "are you a World War II veteran?" And he said, "Yes, but what the hell does that have to do with anything?" Oh boy, I thought I had reached a dead end here. So I said, "Could I sit down and talk with you?" And he told me a few things, but the internet told me much more. 8 ships. He told me they kept moving me around until I could figure out what I was doing. But that's a record that deserves to be preserved. And that's what I try to do with all of these people if I can. Hundreds of my veteran friends, have been visited by surprise with a car that is as old as they are. It's 88 years old, which is the exact age of the youngest veterans. There are some 88-year-olds here tonight, but we do have older people here. I'll mention one of them later. This man was in the Pacific during the war, and he was a combat veteran. Very, very active. However, he did not remember it. Fortunately, his children were there. They knew the right questions to ask, so he was able to respond about this and about that, and we had a very good interview. And then he looked out the window and said, "Could I go see that Model A?" So had to take a picture of him. He died a month later. So I was very happy for his family, for myself, and for him that we had this meeting. There he is as a young man, because we always try to find the pictures of the men and women when they were young. And that little baby there, he was there, present at the meeting. He's older than I am. So sometimes the babies, sometimes the wives get in the picture too. I like those because the whole family is preserved for the future generations. I've got to tell you 2 stories. How many of you have ever heard of Steve Saradsky? Okay, famous Muskegon athlete, and his widow is still living. Virginia would be glad to know that I'm talking about her man. He was in the honor guard for General MacArthur. Well, he was perfectly suited for that, because at the end of the war, when MacArthur took over as the actual leader of Japan, he hand-selected tall, blonde, muscular men. Can you guess why? Whenever General MacArthur was going to go somewhere where there were Japanese around, his honor guard went first. And these miniature people were quite intimidated by Steve Saradsky and all the other very impressive. He was, part of his career was at Fort Benning, where he was a parachute instructor. And in all their training, they knew there would come that day when they would jump out of a perfectly good airplane without landing. They knew it was coming, and they prepared for it, but how can you prepare for that? On one particular day, and I know this because the veteran who was present saw it happen. Steve was up here ordering them up. They all stood up, and they all marched step by step to the door. And one man got to the door and turned around and said, "I quit." Well, can you imagine a military person saying, "I quit"? Steve did not say a word. This big bear of a man just grabbed the young man